Hi, Ugg here with Two Salt Travel, and today I wanted to show you how to tie the party fowl. This is a great little minnow pattern that I have tied up on a size 10 streamer hook with a tungsten bead, and it's got some lead wire added to it as well to really get it down quickly when you're fishing this in the river. I like to fish this pattern in the winter time, and then again in early spring. I'll fish it winter through early spring, and then again I'll bust it out usually in the summertime after most of the hatches are done, and we're fishing a lot of like hopper dropper type patterns, and there's some trico hatches and stuff like that. I'll fish that after the trico hatches get done in the morning, strip streamers through runs and holes and stuff like that. And in the fall, this is a great minnow pattern, baitfish pattern that you can tie on a jighead hook with a slotted tungsten bead, and you can fish it in lakes and reservoirs through the fall. And then once the lakes start to kind of close down a little bit for us, and we're fishing the rivers again, I'll fish this thing into winter, and then that completes the whole year. This is a two-tone baitfish pattern. This one's tied with a black tail and a peacock body with a little black collar, but you can also vary those color combinations. A lot of times I'll use like the baitfish color, which is sort of like a brownish olive, a gold body, and then go back to that baitfish color for the collar. But you can play around with all this neat material that comes from Larva Lace is the brand name. Hope you enjoy this streamer pattern and this video on how to tie it. Next, let's take a look at how to wind one of these up. Alright, so you want to start off by putting a hook in the vise. And this is a Mustad 9672 streamer hook, size 10. It's a 4X long streamer hook. And to it, you're going to want to add a black tungsten bead, and this one is, if I can find the little opening there, we go, and this one is a 1/8 bead, so kind of slender for a size 10 hook, but that's okay. We're going to add a little weight to it too. And then I'm going to want to cast on with the thread, and I'm using the Ultra thread here, a 140, and this is in black. And so I just cast in right behind the bead and cut off my excess, and then touching wraps all the way back down the shank to the bend of the hook. I'm just building a nice little base layer there of thread. And I like to stop, just a little bit past the point of the hook there. And for the tail material, we're using this Larva Lace. It's the angel hair in black. And so, I don't know if you can, hopefully you can read that. And basically this thing just comes on a hank here, and what you want to do is just kind of peel off some of that hank here, separate some of those fibers out from the hank. Whatever you think is going to be a good tail, that might be a little much. And then I'm gonna cut it just a little long, just so I have some material to work with here. So I got a little, clump of it about like this, and I just kind of feel like that's too much material. I just kind of get a feel for in my fingertips about how much do I want to build up this body on the hook. And so for me that's about the right amount. And then I'm going to go about a hook length here with the tail. And I don't like this square tail. So what I do is I just kind of angle the scissors. Let me get that squared off. Angle the scissors like so, and just kind of go around this thing and try and kind of taper it if you can. It's kind of difficult to work with, but just do your best to kind of angle those back so it's not so square. And just do that on 4 sides. Just kind of as best you can, just to kind of get rid of that squareness. Then I'm going to measure that back off again. So yeah, about a hook length there. And I'm going to go ahead and tie in with one loose wrap. And then really bind that down. I can go back to right about where that bend starts and really lash that thing down. So let the bead out of the way there. And then I can cut off my excess right there. And yeah, that tail's looking pretty good. It's not too square. You can also shove your thumb in there and kind of splay it out a little bit too. And there. And that looks pretty natural to me. Like so. And then next you're going to want to add some lead wire. And I'm using the .020 lead wire. Just because I like to have a little weight on this guy. And I'm going to start back at the tail there, and then touching wraps, I'm going to go forward. And I'm just going to stop right, just to leave a little gap there behind the bead. And there I can helicopter that off, and this one I can just kind of pinch it off. And now I can take wraps forward over that lead wire. Excuse me. And then when I get to the bead there, I can build up a little ramp until I can get back up onto the wire again. And I just want to build a nice little layer on top of those lead wraps, so that when at the next stage, when I put my dubbing brush on there, it's not going to fall into those little gaps in between. It's not too big of a deal, but I just kind of like to build up a nice little base layer there. Also, I don't want to see any of those lead wraps through if I lose a little bit of material here. Okay, so then I'm going to go back to the rear of the fly back there by the tail, and now I'm going to create my dubbing loop. And here now I've got some of this angel hair, this larva lace angel hair, and this is the peacock. And so again, this thing comes in just a hank, and I just want to, actually, if I'm tying a bunch of these, I can just pull off about, I don't know, about 2 inches there, and just kind of cut off a big old chunk of that. And then I'm kind of set for, you know, the next few flies that I'm going to tie. But here, so yeah, I just pulled off a big old mess of it, you know, something like this. And make a little pile right there. And then I'm going to create my dubbing loop. And when I do that, I just like to go around it a couple times and then secure it. And I might even bring it back to the tail there. And then I can advance this thread forward. And now I just like to hold that up vertically, and then I can just start feeding some of this angel hair that I'm going to use for my body, and just slide it right on in there, and gravity will kind of hold it in place, you know, in case I kind of hit the thread with my fingers. Sometimes all that stuff starts falling out of there, and it can be a real mess. So I let gravity kind of help me hold it in there. And I want to build a pretty good sized brush, you know, just like having it sort of consistent. You don't want it too clumpy, so just, you know, take about the same amount of fibers each time out of your hand and slide it on in there and sort of stack it. And then when I get to there, what I like to do is pinch it, and then I'll give a couple of spins with my pinky finger, and then that just kind of holds it while I'm getting my gear together here. And so I want to take my tool here, and I just want to grab a hold of this thread with the shepherd end of this tool, and now I can go ahead and start spinning that material. And I just want it to all kind of twist up into a nice brush. But I don't want to go too crazy, because you can actually break your thread if you overdo it on this spinning. So, you know, that's pretty good. I can see I got a pretty good, you know, I got it wrapped pretty good there. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my, if I can find it. Let me go ahead and grab some hackle pliers here, and just grab a hold of that thing, and then I can cut this free from the tool right there. So now I've got it on my hackle pliers, and I like to kind of pinch the thread as I brush this thing out. Basically, I'm just trying to pick out those fibers and just get rid of that bulkiness that's down there where the thread is at the core of this brush. I just don't want it to be too bulky, so that like it closes off that gap in between the shank and the point of the hook there. So yeah, so once I've got that kind of back like so, I'm just going to start wrapping this forward, and I'm going to palmer it as I go. So I'm just going to kind of pull those fibers back rearward, and at the base of the tail there, I don't really need to worry about getting it super thick on there. You know, I don't want to bulk up the hook gap too bad, but if I see some fibers there, I'll try and pull them rearward each time I make a turn. Also be careful at this point you don't get that dubbing brush around the point of the hook. Otherwise then you'll have a utter failure. As I move forward, I can make these wraps, a little tighter until I get to the just behind the bead here, and I want to leave myself a little gap because we're gonna create a collar here with some material, with the black material. So I don't want to advance this all the way to the bead. And then so once I get up there, I can capture that with the thread just to kind of hold it. And then I can crank it down with a couple more tight turns. And at this point, I can just do a couple just to kind of hold my place there while I get the next bit of material ready. And I can palmer that back and lash it down. And here you can do a little brushing if you want. We're going to add a collar to it, so we're going to do another dubbing loop and create another brush. But this is not a bad time to comb out some of those fibers, especially those ones that you can see them kind of wrapping over. You just want to brush all that out because you don't want to see any twists and turns in there. Just be careful you don't brush up the tail too much. Just kind of pull up all those fibers, and then I like to comb them rearward like so. Get a little bit on both sides of the hook. And at this point we're ready for the collar. And so the collar we're gonna match the tail. So it's gonna be that black angel hair again. And I've got a little left over from when I did the tail. So I can just grab some of these guys and bunch them back together. I got a pretty good grouping right there. And then I'll create my dubbing loop again. This one it's going to be a little bit more sparse. It's not going to have quite as much material in it. I just want to go around just a couple of times and then call it quits, because I don't want to build it up too thick. So I don't need a ton of material right here. And then pinch it off, give it a couple of spins just to hold it. And then I can get my tool here on it and start spinning that material again. And just create just a neat little dubbing brush. Pick some material out of there. There's some hanger-oners from the last fly that I tied. Spin that up pretty good. Again, you don't have to go too crazy spinning this thing. Gonna get it about like that. Brush some of those fibers up. And you can see how it's kind of clumpy in there. I just want to make it so it's not as clumpy in spots, that all those fibers are kind of sticking up and away from the core. Grab my hackle pliers, grab a hold of that, cut it loose, and again now you just want to palmer this thing forward just behind the bead, and you don't want to crowd the bead too badly, but we just want to give just a little collar. So we'll go one more time around and then we'll call it quits right there. When I look at like fathead minnows and stuff like that, images of them, you know, or see them out, you know, along the shoreline and stuff like that, one of the things I noticed was that usually the head and the tail are the same color, and then the body is somewhat different. So capture that with one loose, and then you can really crank it down. And then I just kind of like to, you know, free up a little space behind that bead with my fingernails, and then I can palmer that material back, and that'll give me a little room to whip finish. And so now's a good time to do a whip finish, and we'll crank that thing down. With my whip finish, and then I like to get that thing in there pretty good, and then do one more. You know, 6 or 7 turns, whatever, however you like to whip finish flies. And then that feels pretty solid there. It's not going down anymore. And now I can clip that off. And now we just want to brush out that collar. You can see how it's kind of wanting to wind itself around from when we were spinning it. And so I like to just kind of pull those fibers out so they kind of straighten out. They're not turning around the fly. And then brush them rearward, you know, as best you can. Don't have to get too crazy with it. And this just gives it a two-tone. Okay, and now you're ready to trim this thing. Now you'd like to grab a big clump of it like so. And then I'm going to cut it, you know, about a little bit more than what is the hook gape there. And then I'm just going to grab that green material, spin it, and do it again. And this is a little bit of a process. You don't want to get too preeny here, but you know, you don't want to take off too much in one shot. And then, you know, maybe I might comb it one more time and get out some of those. Comb it one more time. And then a lot of times I'll kind of sort of grab it and sort of cut at an angle. And then I like to splay out that tail. Again, it's sometimes when you wrap that body down, it makes that tail. If you see any really wild ones that you want to get out of there. And again, I just keep kind of tapering it back in the same sort of way I did the tail before I tied it on there. You know, just kind of tapering it. This thing, when it gets in the water and you strip it, it'll really kind of slim down. And then it'll puff back up again when you stop. And so it's got a lot of really good action to it. And then, last but not least, you just want to give it a little bit of super glue back there behind the bead on those wraps. So I'll grab some with the bodkin there and kind of hold those fibers back as I paint the thread with this thing. Hopefully you'll get a lot of use out of this fly, and you get a lot of fish to attack it, and so you don't want those threads coming loose after just a couple of fish. You really want them hammering that fly over and over again. You can pick out some of those fibers. And then after I shut this camera off, of course I'll probably continue to kind of keep preening on it. You get the idea. Another thing you can kind of do if you really feel like you really want to keep preening is kind of take these feathers somewhat in a circle like that, and then you can really kind of clean up some of those loose ends and make it, you know, more uniform all the way around. But basically that's the idea. That's the party fowl. This is a great little streamer. Also try it on the jig hook when you're doing still water. If you liked this video, please hit subscribe on my channel, and you can check out more of these fly tying videos and more instructional videos on fly fishing. Okay, thanks.